In this video, you'll learn differences between third-party cookies, first-party data, how these terms are used, and sometimes they're used interchangeably, but there are important differences between them, and also how recent changes to how browsers treat third-party cookies affect advertising conversions, tracking, and attribution. We'll begin with third-party cookies because that's probably the oldest version of cookies used by ad platforms. So the way cookie works is when somebody accesses a website, let's say we go to a website called facebook.com. But there's nothing specific about this. It's the same process for any website. Then the browser sends requests to the server, somewhere on the internet, in this case, Facebook's server. The server returns a web page, and it also returns cookies. So, for example, it might return an identifier to this browser that is not set in the browser, but it gets stored, even though it's not visible, but it gets stored in the cookies store on a computer running browser. And where it will be used is when somebody comes back to this website, this value stored here, same value, it will then be transmitted back to facebook.com in subsequent requests. And this will happen with all requests. This flow, it happens with any cookies, first party or third party, regardless of what happens. If it's the same domain, it's the same flow. Browser accesses the domain name, it can return the values that then get stored associated with that domain name and then retransmitted back to the domain name with each request. The way third-party cookies used to work is they were shared across the website. So in this example, coming back to the Facebook example, when somebody would go to a different website, let's say the browser would send requests to the request server on the internet, receive a response, and the response will contain an instruction to display a tracking pixel, which can be a tracking pixel, could be a tracking JavaScript, doesn't matter, loaded from the facebook.com website. So the browser then has to send requests to retrieve that bit of information, a bit of an image or JavaScript from that. However, because the browser knows that this comes from the facebook.com, when third-party cookies are operational, it will also transmit any information stored in the browser storage. So along with this request, we'll be getting the identifier that was previously stored here in the cookie storage. And it will be transmitted, and obviously there's a way for Facebook to identify that this request comes from acme.com. So now this identity, user identity that's been stored initially, is accessible for any visits to any website on the internet. Naturally, this was causing some concerns about privacy and tracking on the internet. And so browsers around the year 2016, they started to block this kind of access to cookies. They started to sandbox cookies. So instead of the cookie set by one domain being accessible throughout the entire internet, for example, Safari has introduced intelligent tracking prevention that had some restrictions on when it can be accessed and where it can be accessed and so on. In many cases, it would not be possible anymore to access that information, that the visitor of the current website is somebody that came from a specific user of Facebook or a specific user of Google. You may have noticed how this coincided sort of with disappearance of like buttons from the internet. So each page used to have like button from Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and then it started to be downplayed. And the main reason for that was the ad platforms stopped to promote this to content suppliers that were no longer favoring their tweets because it didn't really produce enough information to them. So what happened then? The ad platforms started to find different ways that didn't rely on cookies being shared between the websites, different ways to track the conversions. So for example, how a modern pixel would work. Again, we have somebody visiting facebook.com website. They are on facebook.com. They visit the website, had a look there, and click an advert. Now, when this advert is clicked, it will direct to the advertiser's website. However, it will also contain a click identifier. Those parameters have different names depending on ad platform, and they also can be sometimes anonymized somehow. So sometimes it might be unique, sometimes they might be shared between, say, a group of users. So one specific case where it happens is click identifiers from Google iOS apps, where they use non-unique identifiers to kind of make it more privacy friendly and impossible for the ad platform to identify any specific persons who actually clicked the ad. So this goes here to the website. Now, it might be running same Facebook pixel. It goes to facebook.com. However, instead of, because it doesn't have access, it doesn't know what identifier this person had on a facebook.com domain. But it still knows that this person is viewing the page with a certain URL parameter. And because this URL parameter contains a click identifier, it makes it much more straightforward. So this click identifier first came from Facebook server when the page with an ad was viewed. Then it was passed as a parameter to this website. And now any scripts that run on this website, even, and this is often sort of overlooked, but even scripts from third-party domains like Facebook Pixel, Google Tag, anything like that, they will still have access to the URL string and any parameters that it contains. So here we have this pixel that has an access to click identifier, and it sends this click identifier in the request to the facebook.com domain name. So what in essence it tells us is we have viewed this page, but it also does one more thing. It will store a cookie, a first-party cookie, for this domain name, ahmed.com. It will set any identifier. So in case of Facebook, it's called FBP, but that's, again, like all ad platforms, essentially the same. TikTok, Google Ads, there's no differences. So it stores the identifier generated by Pixel, right? So we have two parameters now. We have click identifier, which is parameter 1, and we have Facebook Pixel identifier that's been saved for this domain. What it does then, it sends both of those parameters to the ad platform server. It's called browser ID for simplicity. So this is a first-party cookie set for the advertiser's domain name, and it linked with a click identifier. And the click identifier is linked with the user. So ad platform always knows that this first-party cookie, it's saved for this domain name. It's now linked for, well, not for eternity, but it linked for a while with that click identifier. So what this does is now any conversions that happen on this website are now can be associated with that original click, because the website now doesn't need to know who was the person behind, which Facebook user or ad platform user was that person that accesses the website, makes interactions, completes elite forms, and so on, to attribute this, because it now has linked that user with a click identifier, and it now links anything that happens on the website with that first-party cookie set in the browser for the advertiser's domain name, which is now transmitted from any pages. So if we continue browsing this website, I know /page 1, it will get whatever browser ID cookie is used and transmit it to the together with the transaction. So for example, it might be a page view, purchase, anything at all that might be happening there. Now, it would be fair to ask what's all this talk about third-party cookies being deprecated is about. And really, for most advertisers, it wouldn't have a lot of impact. Where it will have an impact is in case of, for something like retargeting, right? Because here, in this first-party cookie setup, we have relied on the click identifier being first passed by ad platform, because ad platform would then internally link it with the user identifier. Now, if we don't need that, then there isn't really a reliable way to tell that somebody who's coming to a website is a certain user of the ad platform. So that's really the only scenario where it creates an issue. Let's delve slightly deeper in when first-party data make a lot of sense and make a lot of impact on the conversions in ad platforms. Where you might want to do something more elaborate than just having a Facebook pixel or Google tag or a similar tracking solution is when you might have a purchases, maybe it's completion of trial, maybe it's an upsell, maybe it's something kind of more elaborate that happen down the line. They don't necessarily happen in the same browser window. They might not be even done by the same person. So let's look at one of the such conversion funnels. The beginning is the same. We have somebody coming to the Facebook domain, clicking an ad, going to the website, accessing the website with a click identifier being available, and let's say completing the lead form. Email, submit button. What you want to do in this case is to have some way to store this information and also store click identifier. Because even if, let's say, you implement some kind of enhanced events measurement, something, and send this data to the Facebook, you don't really have then any information whether they actually will be used to attribute the conversions that you might send them later. So at this point, the website has an information about customer email and information about click ID. So email was entered by user and click ID was passed by the Facebook, which internally attributes it to user. And let's imagine this scenario that the purchase doesn't happen immediately. Somebody gets added to a mail list and then gets notifications and makes a purchase further down the line. So they might be coming to the website without having any of that information, without having browser cookies, basically, right? Because, and again, if we are to jump back slightly, the browser cookie store would record that information, would record browser ID, and the browser ID along with the click ID will be sent there. So Facebook would know how browser ID and the click ID are associated. Now, let's say we do it differently. So somebody completed the contact form, completed the lead form, and then makes a purchase, but somehow maybe it's expired, which a lot of browsers tend to do now, expire all sort of identifying cookies in 7 days, in 3 days, something like this. So they usually don't tend to last long. So the website tries to access this, but it doesn't get, so this was browser ID A, and now it gets browser ID B. And say they completed payment. And when this payment is completed, now you want to send the conversion to Facebook. Now, if it's just sent sort of in a straightforward way, saying, right, somebody just completed payments of, I don't know, paid $100, and here's the information, and that gets sent to Facebook, it wouldn't know who that person is, right? Because it's they're just two entirely different users from Facebook's perspective, from their platform's perspective. So it wouldn't attribute that. Now, a lot of advertisers try to use server-side GTM. Then instead of going directly to Facebook, they would go through the advertiser server, which is kind of helpful because you have more control of data. But it would still proxy them as two independent events. So it will be landing page view from the browser A, and will be purchase from the browser B. And this is where a lot of troubles occur, because when you're sending these conversions, you would go to Events Manager and you would see all the conversions looking good, each conversion sent from both browsers, sent server-side to CAPI. It has users' email, it has a lot of user information, browser information, it all looks good. But the problem is all that information, it's not necessarily connectable by Facebook on their end to throughout the entire funnel. So what we want to do in this case is and you would do this by looking at this click identifier that's been sent initially and connecting the details of this purchase with this click identifier, and then sending that as an event that will contain all information. Will contain click identifier, browser identifier, email, purchase value, and so on. And you would get it sent to the server side of Facebook. And then it will recognize immediately who that is. It remembers that click identifier that was present there. So there's no variability. All comes in single sort of package. So you don't rely on deduplication. You don't have to worry about whether the Facebook deduplicates this correctly. And yeah, it just works. One way to simplify this would be to use a dedicated customer data platform. So one example would be Able Customer Data Platform, which helps advertisers to understand where each bit of revenue, each conversion comes from. And it does it by keeping a track of all that parameters we discussed. So it records click identifiers as they come to the website. It records emails or any identifiable information that can be used to identify the customer and build a 360-degree customer profile that links both ad clicks and the information that customer completes on the website. And what this allows to do is to actually convert, to find any conversions that happen later on, whether they happen on a website, like in this example, or they might happen, somewhere entirely in a payment system like Stripe. They might happen in CRM, and then just attribute them, connect them with that click identifier, and send to Facebook or Google Ads, TikTok, any ad platforms in a way that helps to recognize them and helps to solve limitations arising from the fact that third-party cookies are no longer available.